Today we discuss the embodiment of preaching social injustice next to iDubbbz or a slice of Wonder Bread. Now, if you haven't seen my first video, Weeb Wars, it might be best to pop over to that show to get a feel for our subject before diving in, and that should help acclimate you to where this is going. But, for some quick context, to best describe our subject, imagine a marshmallow that preaches intolerance of all other marshmallows over the Hershey's chocolate bar or that telephone scamming, curry-eating graham cracker cunt, until all the other marshmallows fall into line to make a perfect unified s'more, and then begin bitching about appropriation when some of the marshmallows get a bit too crispy. Is crispy a bit too on the nose? Who gives a f***? Kaylin Saucedo? I don't know, formerly Dixon, began uploading online under the name MarzGurl starting as early back as 2004 prior to her time on Channel Awesome or her hashtag KickVic and her attempts to destroy a beloved voice actor's career in hopes of launching her own. In fact, her internet history dates all the way back to this embarrassing Angel Fire website, The Real High School Life, written and edited by MarzGurl, detailing how herself and her only two friends are the only noteworthy and interesting people in a sea of troglodytes because somehow being a part of an educational system with a social hierarchy is interesting or unique to her situation. But we must not forget that this is coming from the same person that thinks the Pledge of Allegiance is a thing strictly allocated to Texas. Now, because MarzGurl wanted to bitch on Twitter about how I didn't watch her full 11-hour video for all the petty and minor context that leads to her nothing burger of a conclusion, I thought I would do her a solid and comb through every minuscule piece of her useless Holden Caulfield-themed manifesto if Holden Caulfield had an even bigger vagina, a lack of originality, and the only assassination he was involved in was someone's character. The pages read like Anne Frank in the mind of Helen Keller if she was destined to grow up looking like Rosie O'Donnell Weinstein Roseanne Barr. MarzGurl is giving us the real inside scoop of what it's like to be the lowest functioning, high functioning autistic kid at a school filled with window licking crayon eaters. But don't you worry, dear listener. We're not going to read through all of it. In fact, 80% of it are just dead links to would-be websites of people who either let their domain lapse or have the decency to wipe their embarrassing childhood emotions from the internet forever before someone could catalog and make fun of them. I've just decided to categorize some of the more interesting things I found, starting at MarzGurl's archives and my first love letter. I'll admit that this is pretty surface level, but so is all of MarzGurl's 11-hour rant, so I don't think I'm detracting at all by taking a look at a love letter written by a secret admirer of hers, considering she didn't mind putting it out for the rest of the world to read and ridicule.
Hey, I'm writing to tell you what I think of you. I think that you're the bee's knees, if you know what I mean. I've sat behind you all year and I notice that you do things that by some would be considered rude. I really wouldn't say that. I would say that you express yourself in a way some don't approve of. I'd really like if we could start seeing each other, and I hope you'd like it too. I'd like to call you and for you to call me. Sincerely, Bend Over. P.S. You're really pretty.
It's filled with grammatical errors and almost no punctuation, but the most alarming detail being that it's addressed to MarzGurl. Obviously, this is meant to poke fun at one of her admirers, and although their name has been changed and it's only a lighthearted jab at someone's intelligence and spelling capabilities, I'm not above the childish shit. I mean, I'm doing it right now. I just find it a little telling of MarzGurl's character to insult someone's lack of intelligence when hers can easily be called into question. In fact, I'm going to set up a grammatical counter for the remainder of this video. The lowdown on Hicksville High. Hicksville being the clever little name she gave to her high school because she spends the majority of her website bashing it and everyone's intelligence in it. Now, this portion is necessary context to understand the type of mindset we're dealing with. It shows how MarzGurl, even as a teenager, was either one of those ugly kids from South Park,
burn the whole school down to the ground,
or an even weirder thought, she was socially accepted, possibly looked down on because they assumed that she was special needs, and throughout her educational development, she had a narration track running in the back of her head on how much better she was compared to these simple-minded hillbillies that don't understand how important and successful she would soon become.
I tell you, it was really hard growing up in this lazy little town. For the longest time, I'd say for about 8 years, I could have sworn that one day, all of my classmates would grow out of their foolishness and their stupidity. But by the time the 8th grade ended, I kind of figured out that I would have a lot to be sarcastic over when I got into high school. I didn't think I would hit it right on the button so hard.
When you live in South Central United States like I do, you see two things that stand out a great deal: kickers and football players. Kickers is the same term we've given to people who at least dress like cowboys. And what's really weird is that most kickers guys actually play football. And so most social activity is located around football. I personally could care less about that sport. A bunch of fat kickers grunting and grabbing at each other, and it's a real turnoff to me. This is the majority of the high school, which means that most of them are flunking algebra. Their IQ barely gets any higher than their shoe size.
Now, I'm assuming she's referring to the term kickers, which isn't entirely important, but if you're going to insult them, you might as well do it f***ing properly.
Kickers aren't the only ones that attend our school. Most of the rest of the students are punk rockers, stoners, and hackers. These are the people with troublesome home lives and don't know the first step in how to fill up their free time. This is how hackers find the time to figure out how to hack.
Now, I'm not exactly sure what she means by hackers, but unless she has a sect of internet savants in her school that are creating code to break into sensitive government data or Goldman Sachs 401ks, or they're just guessing passwords to teachers' emails, I'm assuming she's just referring to the kids who spend all day on AOL Messenger and chat rooms getting catfished by 40-year-old men.
And the stoners have all the time they need for that short-lived happy feeling. These people have major self-image to keep. They really are brilliant people, but looking brilliant means looking like a dork. So I think that they're stupid in class on purpose. But wait, no. The drugs really do make him stupid. The punk walkers are just posers. They're the ones who want to look rough but are too scared to even pick up a can of carbonated liquid. That's right. They've been fooling you for years.
What the f*** does that even mean? Is she saying that punk rock enthusiasts don't enjoy soft drinks? What the f*** does that have to do with anything?
Another new fad that has been beginning to pick up, most unfortunately, is the rap fashion. This small group of people can only be defined as white posers with hair slicked flat down with water, and they have obviously never heard of that clever little device known as a belt. They have a lack of respect for the entire human race, sound like my type of people. They also think that they're the greatest thing to reach this world since Sir Mix-a-Lot, just because they can repeat nasty rhymes at supersonic speeds.
Way to shit on black culture. Nasty rhymes. Tupac and Biggie did not die just for some narcissistic white girl from San Antonio to shit on their beautiful lyrics. The Ruby King is not currently taking baths in a washing machine inside of a laundromat in the bayou just for you to shit on his culture. It's all he has.
Skaters are basically a mixture of hackers and stoners with the added feature of skateboards. These people actually think that it's hip to go gliding on a piece of wood with wheels and go ramming themselves headfirst into walls and cars. How do these guys come up with ideas like this? How did the conversation go? Maybe something like this.
Okay, I'm just gonna skip over this dumb shit.
The majority of Hicksville High is made up of idiotic white people. This includes myself half the time. But the second largest group of people are the Latinos. Or the Mexicans, or something really. Living so close to the Mexico border really lets our school be bilingual, even though most of us don't have a clue what those Latinos are even saying.
Okay, this is starting to come off a bit racist.
All we know is that they like to come up behind you when you're opening your locker, say something to one another in Spanish, point and laugh at you, and then just walk off. Makes you feel really good about yourself.
There are maybe 10 black kids in our entire school. And of course, all the white hicks here have to find some stupid way of bringing up the fact that they're black. They're no different than any of us whites, nor are they any different than the Latinos. But for some odd reason, people like to pick on the blacks the most. No one is mean to them. They're all just having fun by going up to black people saying, "Hey, man, don't be pissed at me just because I'm black."
I don't have any words. You do with this what you will.
Now we come across the most frightening of all students at Hicksville High, the plebs. They're probably the most dangerous of all the social groups combined. I warn you, if you're on a pleb, don't try telling one how to wear their clothes. Their temperament is about unpredictable as their wardrobe for the next day. Most of the time, they all look as if they should be put on my doll. Even the male plebs, they're all often overly moody.
Our solution to stopping child predators has been here all along, my friends. Just make them read MarzGurl's Angel Fire website.
Do you have any
Imagine the forgettable dorky from school who spent her entire time in high school struggling to maintain the only two friends that would associate with her, but she's constantly running a Dexter's Laboratory evil genius monologue in her head, despite her openly admitting that she's incapable of base-level algebra and can't spell ridiculous. She has such a lack of social awareness that she thinks that movies come before dinner on dinner and movie dates. Like, no, you go to dinner to decide beforehand if you want to finger in the movie theater or not. It's in the name dinner and a movie. Here's an excerpt.
After an hour and a half of FBJ fantasies,
Freddie Prinze Jr.
in a big dark room, the house lights finally come up, only to reveal that your day's fallen asleep and has begun to drool on your shoulder. You take deep, slow breaths and tell yourself that everything will be okay. Then you shake your guy awake so that you can move on to dinner. You drive around aimlessly for an hour just trying to find a place to eat. Reluctantly, you give in to the idea of eating at the Olive Garden. After having the waiter spill the water on you and drop pasta in your pants, you angrily pull your dad's credit card out of your pocket and throw it in his face, saying, "Just take it. I'm never coming back here again. Lousy service. That man's going to hell." Well, the night finally ends when the two of you make out in the tiny backseat of a Porsche in a Walmart parking lot. You finally suppose that letting him drool on you was worth it after all. But there's still that issue about the size of a backseat of a car. And you can only hope that you don't come out of it with an STD or end up getting pregnant. And you really have to worry about what your parents will think when you come home and they discover that you no longer have their credit card. Yep, the life of a prep can be really hard.
Okay, hold on, pause. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but in one line, she seems to think that when you get poor service from a restaurant, that anyone, let alone the privileged 1%, would throw their credit card at the service worker and tell them to just take it. Does she think people will spend any amount of money to forego their poor dining experience? Then at the end, and again, I may be interpreting this wrong, and she just left out the more intimate details of her weirdly specific fantasy, but it seems she believes that making out in a small backseat of a vehicle, amongst the other difficulties posed by a small backseat, would lead to pregnancy. Don't get me wrong, I know I'm nitpicking and essentially just making fun of her misguided teenage sense of social interaction and etiquette, but remember that this is the person that you're supposed to look up to when it comes to what should and shouldn't be socially acceptable. Another fantastic example of this comes from her MarzGurl's Tour of Hicksville High page, in an excerpt about a guy she refers to as Boxman.
Meet Boxman. He lives in a box. Well, at least it's what he told us. He was moving into a new house and we said to him, "Yeah, I'd bet you're moving into a box." So that's what we've decided. He lives in a box. He's gonna be a senior this next year. And he took Leva to the prom with him while she was still a freshman. Am I the only person who finds this to be wrong?
Why, yes. Yes, I think you might be. They're only 2 years in age difference. You're even wording it to make it sound creepy by referencing his age as he's going to be a senior next year, despite failing to mention that your friend is also going to be a sophomore next year as well. Keep in mind, they're still both children and would otherwise only be 3 years in age difference at most. You sad fucking cave dweller. Also, I find it really funny that in so many parts of this website, it seems like she's attempting to protect her friend's identity, I suppose, by just using the first letter of her name or nickname or username or whatever the just to fuck up and drop the ball a few times. I mean, maybe I'm just overthinking this. Obviously, if she wanted to protect her friend's identity, she wouldn't post a picture of her friend for everyone to see, right? There's a lot on this site to make fun of her for, but I was surprised at how most of her reserves around child safety, health and well-being, and the comfort of others goes right out the fucking window when you read almost any paragraph detailing her revulsion of her school or the people in it.
While I was walking up the steps onto the bus, I took a good look at our trusty driver. She's a sad-looking thing, old and blind, and somehow always had some better place to keep her hands besides on the steering wheel, as well as some better place to keep her eyes besides on the road. And this morning, she looked especially sleepy. I had a feeling that somehow this ride would be more exciting than anything I'd ever experienced at any Six Flags theme park. On most days, you can always find a decent seat on this bus, It's overcrowded and smells like a morgue, but not today. I actually found a couple empty seats where I could finally keep to myself, and for the first time in my entire life, I actually got the seat at the very back of the bus. The seat most wanted by everyone else,
except for Rosa Parks.
And I got it. I figured that this seat might serve a purpose because it looked as if our bus driver was about to cause us to be in a rollover accident. And if that happened, I had the emergency exit door sitting off to my right where I could be the first to escape before the vehicle exploded into flames. I would watch happily as my rivals burned in a ball of burning bus fury, and then I would pull out my marshmallows and roast them over the corpses. But don't we all know that wishes don't ever come true?
What the f? My sentiments exactly. You wouldn't want those marshmallows to get too crispy. This bitch wants all of her rivals to burn alive while she roasts marshmallows over their corpses. And some of you might say that I've said much worse and that I'd be a hypocrite to judge. And I want you to remember that this sort of shit doesn't faze me, despite it lacking any sort of punchline, and it kind of just feels like a declaration of one's hopes and dreams. The point is that this is the mentality of someone who has the good of the future and the protection of young and impressionable women everywhere in mind. Can you feel me clutching my pearls? Oh, that's right, MarzGurl. I'm gonna moral high ground this shit out of you. There are countless examples of her odd behavior, from short stories about teachers whose crotches catch fire, I'm assuming this is another fantasy of hers or one of her weird friends, to all of those ableist slurs she's up in arms about 25 years later. And trust me, I know it's been 25 years and people can change and you shouldn't let your past hold you back or represent what you are now, but she went after Vic starting as early back as his Liberty University days and even Thomas Road Baptist Church, even going as far to use his past and past affiliations to foreshadow his future actions.
I have to admit, it's really difficult not to look at Vic's later actions in life that we're aware of without also considering the background from whence he came.
So I would say that it might seem hypocritical of her if she didn't see this as fair game. So if you find the age difference between a 15 and a 17-year-old as disgusting and inappropriate, or you sympathize for her unfamiliarity with basic social interactions, such as how babies are made, or how first dates take place, or how those two typically coincide with one another, or you think it's perfectly normal to discuss your gratification over the horrific death of your peers, and not to mention her comfortability with using such ableist and damaging words such as then maybe this last part of the website segment might pique your interest. The horrors of anime. No, this doesn't seem to be irony or sarcasm. She dedicates entire paragraphs about why she hates anime and the perverts that make it, because anime is nothing if not a sexual, lascivious orgy between underage, pointy, and poorly animated cartoon characters with poorly dubbed voices, in MarzGurl's opinions. Now, some of you unfamiliar with MarzGurl may be scratching your head and wondering why any of this is relevant to her character, but I'll give you a bit of context. This is the same girl that only a few years later would tour Onicon, Oshicon, Kamikaze-Con, A-Con, and Chibi-Con multiple times. All of these, if you're unfamiliar, are anime conventions, and no, she was not there to stand outside and scream homophobic slurs or bash the attendees, although that would be very funny. No, she was there as an active fan. Most people have called her a poser or a grifter, and I believe it's equally possible that she was a closeted weeb all along. But it's striking to see someone go from vehemently hating a subculture to attending frequent conventions and later pursuing 3 months of education in Japan for what she would explain as a fondness for the culture, despite only really talking about how you should not visit Japan solely as an anime fan.
If you go to Japan with your only knowledge of Japan being through anime and manga, you're going in with some serious blinders on. It's something that I would really discourage.
Well, how the fuck do you figure that might be disappointing to others, MarzGurl, if you didn't travel there yourself under the same pretenses? The website is mostly dedicated to expressing her lack of creativity by denouncing her educational institute, early examples of internalized racism, main character syndrome, and stereotyping everyone apart from herself as being a dumb hick despite her countless and repeated spelling errors. That's essentially it for her past portion of this video. Since she left school, she pursued filmmaking and entertainment with all of the comedy prowess of a short-haired lesbian in New York.
MarzGurl Productions goes to the bathroom.
Not long after, she would audition for Doug Walker's contest for the Nostalgia Chick, which would present MarzGurl the opportunity to really stretch her arms and express her editing, acting, and audience retention skills.
So, for a taste of something truly chick-like and truly nostalgic, I present to you The Last Unicorn. The Last Unicorn was an...
Alright, I've already lost interest. And to everyone's lack of surprise, she didn't win. But Doug needed more diversity hires, and he didn't have any learning disabled orangutans, so MarzGurl got to produce and be a personality. It helped boost her career in the sense that people recognized her because she was standing next to a recognizable person, similar to how simps bought Belle Delphine's bathwater, or Amaranth's yeast beer. Essentially, MarzGurl is just a discarded yeast, which fits closely into our transition, as less than a decade later, MarzGurl would be discarded by Channel Awesome. Or she would discard herself by Channel Awesome. Essentially, imagine your yeast cleaned itself out. Following her departure, Channel Awesome's former obscurus Lupa would begin posting some Twitter stories that would become a Google Doc referred to as Change the Channel, featuring several former content creators, including MarzGurl herself. She would take up a majority of the doc, most just petty bullshit, which should help foreshadow the type of online crybaby she would show herself to be later. But let's wrap this up with JewWario, a late friend and fellow creator of MarzGurl. Now, his past isn't particularly important. Well, it is, but just not to this video. Look, all you really need to know is that he was outed as a rapist and a pedophile, and was subsequently removed from Channel Awesome before taking his own life. MarzGurl claims in a video titled In Regards to JewWario that she became aware of JewWario's actions around the time that they created the Change the Channel Google Doc, and had no prior knowledge during his life nor after his passing when she finished his film Farewell Fami Kamen Rider, or helped raise awareness and perform charity runs for donations in his honor. It turns out JewWario had a long history of this type of misconduct that Channel Awesome may or may not have been familiar with. But when Change the Channel was released, choosing not to disclose the name of the victim or the predator, Channel Awesome rebutted with just enough information for internet sleuths to snuff out who the predator was. MarzGurl claims that they intentionally left his and the victim's names out to avoid the victims being discovered and harassed, as well as JewWario's family, which I completely agree with. Now, most people believe that she knew for longer than she let on. And her Vic Mignogna tirade was essentially her motivation and push to get on the other side of this controversy. Now, I have no idea if that's true, but do I believe it? Not really. She's stupid, but I don't think she's that stupid to assume that she can get away with producing a feature-length film in honor of her predator and no one would find out or call her on her shit. But I do think it's possible that she was worried about what being associated with him might do for her reputation. Considering she focuses mostly on people attacking the victims, where they're more likely to attack the people he associated with, and preemptively disabled comments because she knew exactly what people were going to say about her. She also spends a heavy amount of time weighing all the reasons she thinks she should keep up a movie inspired, created, and originally directed by a predator.
If our work ever hurt anyone by existing, I'm so sorry that we did that to you.
But we're going to leave it up for posterity's sake. Yeah, I would just go ahead and take it down personally, but not because you created Jeepers Creepers 2.0, just because it's bad.
Engine!
$100, please.
So this really isn't your average video game, huh?
No, and the man who used it before certainly wasn't your average man. He was passionate about sharing things that he enjoyed with people. Sharing things. JewWario, my friend.
Alright, so we finally come to the meat of what kicked off this entire thing to begin with. MarzGurl, in her only notable credit to the online space, is the hashtag KickVic in a post she created on Twitter, kickstarting a lot of the online outrage surrounding this topic. Vic Mignogna is a voice actor who is accused of sexual assault and inappropriate touching, groping, and kissing of underage fans, specifically females, which was later backed by Monica Rial and Jamie Marchi with similar claims of assault and inappropriate conduct. Following MarzGurl's hashtag, many former fans, in the form of random accounts on the internet, would tell similar stories of feeling assaulted or uncomfortable around Vic, with some going as far as to say that he stalked them around conventions and to their hotel rooms. Although MarzGurl was not directly involved, you can look at her as essentially a general of the online campaign that would eventually remove Vic from his career at Funimation and Rooster Teeth and actively tracking down venues he'd be making appearances at and asking her followers to call those venues and have him removed from panels. This would cause a massive uproar that would see Vic supporters harassing or bullying her online, most notably Yellow Flash and Nick Rekieta, in which she would go after the former for defamation and spreading misinformation. A little ironic, but unable to afford the cost of a lawyer herself, she would crowdfund it, as all proud and respectable former minor niche celebrities would. Now, I have no idea where this lawsuit went or where the money went. I can look online and speculate, and I'm sure some corner of the internet and some Twitter or Reddit post somewhere there's some details of how the money was spent or whether the lawsuit was ever pursued further, but speculation says nowhere. But I did tend to notice that she crowdfunds pretty regularly.
Did you know that she leaked her Amazon wish list on her campaign Twitter?
You did mention that.
Yeah, she did. She did that. I'm not even kidding.
Even going as far to crowdfund her own wedding and attempt to save her cat, which she didn't. Rip. And the only other thing she's done outside of her failed YouTube career is utilizing her language studies in Japanese to write closed captions and subtitles as odd jobs for various pieces, but for someone who constantly needs to crowdfund or afford healthy and well looked after pets, or to threaten someone who hurt your sensitive little feelings or damage the reputation you didn't have to begin with, her and her husband tend to take a lot of trips out. Sometimes to premiere showings, opening events, or local anime conventions, but mostly food. Lots and lots of food. Now, I'm not implying that she uses her crowdfunding to afford her movie before dinner dates, but considering her work can be done from home and Los Angeles is a pretty expensive place to live, I think it's fair to argue that her next fun run for charity should be taking her fat ass to a lower cost of living area, focus on this subtitles instead of this failed influencer bullshit, and take that social activism and shut the f*** up. Listen, neither of us are the best judge of character when it comes to people we trust, so take it from me and just shut the f*** up. Apart from that, here are some various posts I found about her from strangers on the internet. Most, if not all, provide no proof and maybe references to something else entirely. But if I recall correctly, this would be what MarzGurl deems
first-hand testimony from an entire generation of
MarzGurl's catalogers,
giving extremely detailed personal experiences.
So you take that for what you will. Honestly, I can't wait to see what she thinks about my video. Personally, I think she's really going to like it. Considering I've only echoed the same bullshit sentiments she used in her video, she can either disavow this video, proving how stupid and pointless hers was, or she can accept the video for what it is, which would damage her character surrounding the Vic Mignogna situation and still make an ass of herself. So, I'm excited to see. Thank you for making it this far. I am extremely sorry for how long it's taken me to get around to this video, but with my wedding and trying to make bigger and better content, I hope it more than makes up for it. Patrons on screen, you are all lovely. Please leave a like or a dislike. I don't really give a shit either way. And don't forget to tell me in the comments why I'm wrong, because insert political correctness. Much support to Vic, and I'm glad to hear that he's making a comeback. Thank you for those who helped me make this video. They'll be on screen. And as a new panelist on the Ruby King's Kingdom, please go over there and subscribe and come hang out on the live streams if you want to hang out with me. We love bringing people into the conversations, and I would really enjoy to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, but until next time, be well.